We'll go ahead and get started. All of you that are with us right now, thanks so much for joining us. Um, Certainly hope that you get a lot out of this conversation about ransomware. Obviously, one of the biggest things that are facing everybody, regardless of what type of business you're in and where you're from. We're going to do some real quick introductions before we get into the crux of the matter. So joining us is Rob Gelsinger, who is the founder and CEO of SNS, Secure Network Systems. We've also got Jim Peterson, who is a cybersecurity specialist. Jim's going to be running most of the conversation. And then my name is Scott Gravinger. I'm one of SNS's technology consultants. I'll also have a few things to go ahead and share with you today. And then we've got Richard Sierra, who is one of our senior engineers as well. And with that, we are ready to go. Jim, I'm going to hand it over to you.
All right. Hey, thanks a lot, Scott. This is such an interesting topic when we talk about ransomware because it's such a common conversation to have, but it's one of many attacks. We'll talk about a few different ones out there, but just understanding how this one can really impact businesses and take systems down. It can cost a lot of money. It can be really impactful to organizations. We're going to go through a whole story of one today. I know, Scott, you're going to even tell a story, and we're going to really dig into trying to help you understand how you can defend against them and really what to look for as the telltale signs of a ransomware event. Well, let's start off with, you know, why are we talking about this now? If we were all sitting in a room together, we do a lot of in-person events as well. We'd ask you to raise your hand if you had a letter come in from a financial institution or a bank saying, oops, we accidentally misplaced your data. Somebody came in and took it. We sent it to the wrong person. And most of us would raise our hands. Over the last few years, we've gotten those letters and ask you how that felt. Most of us would say that's pretty uncomfortable. I felt very vulnerable. I signed up for the security monitoring for a year on the first one, maybe even the second one, but I kind of started ignoring them after the third and fourth came in. Well, Rob, Scott, and I, and everybody on the SNS team in ConnectWise, we have to see the other side of that. We have to see the businesses that are impacted by these type of events that aren't sure how much this is going to cost their organization, if their business is going to be open in 6 months, or what to tell their employees or their partners who have trusted them with that data. And that's what we're trying to defend against. And that's why we really want to dig into this really interesting but scary topic today. Now, the reality of ransomware has really expanded over the year. If we think of some of the stats, and we won't try to stat you to death here, but just the volume of attacks, if we look at that left box, the volume of attacks have increased from 4,000 attacks per second to 7,000 attacks per second, just in the Microsoft environment alone. Most of us have Microsoft accounts, and that volume is really increasing. So we have to have solutions that can protect against that velocity. And if we look back 2 years ago, it would have been at 400. So we expect to see that continue to uptick over time. That middle section really shows us the cost of cybercrime on our complete economy, reaching almost $11 trillion. This is significantly impactful, not just to businesses and people, but to states and countries, and obviously that global community holistically. This number, if it were a country, would be the third largest gross domestic product, just showing you the impact that this is having on our world. And that last number, and this is the one a lot of business owners have kind of struggle with, the average ransomware payment, just the one piece of a ransomware attack has hit $569,000. Now, most of us that have had small businesses or run small businesses know if we had to write a check for $569,000, that would be a really bad day if we could even do it. I know in my old business days, I couldn't have written that check on a Friday. But we understand that this number really represents typically between 5 and 10% of our total revenue. When bad actors get in and they're able to encrypt the environment, they typically find a lot out about your organization. They can target that number either to be that 5 to 10% or the maximum amount in your cyber insurance. And Scott, I think you were going to give us a little more background on this.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. So in terms of cost, we look at compliance very, very closely. That's something we find is very overlooked when someone is potentially coming to work with us initially. That's kind of been overlooked by them internally. And so what's that mean to your business? Well, we will always ask a prospective partner of ours, do you currently have a cyber insurance policy in place? And very often they do. That's great, but that's only a first step that you need to take. Then the next important thing is, have you actually complied? Have you basically vetted out your insurance policy against your real world IT and cybersecurity practices? Because it's great that you have a policy, but it's more important to know that if you should ever need it, that you'll actually get paid off on that policy. And unfortunately, all too often, very late, many folks find out that since they were not in compliance with that policy that they have, that they actually paid all those premiums for maybe years, but then when they need it, they won't actually get a payment. So what S&S does is we work closely with a partner, Yukon. They're an insurance broker, and they'll actually go ahead and take a look at our clients or prospective clients' current cyber policies. They'll see if there's gaps between what their current policy is and what their processes, their software, and their training looks like. And then we'll work with them basically to tailor a very specific solution for them that will make sure that we eliminate those gaps. And if there should ever be an event, they'll know that their policy will actually go ahead and make them whole.
That's so important because what we find out is that ransom payment itself is typically between 10 and 20% of the total cost of an event. So having the right insurance, making sure they're truly protected and that they have the right solutions in place so they can avoid using that ransom or using that cyber policy is really important. Great job there. Just a couple of definition slides. When we talk about cyber events, we typically can use a lot of different terms. Attack, event, incident, and breach are four that we use sometimes interchangeably, but they mean something, especially when we're talking to a cyber insurance provider or somebody in an industry that regulates that information. Attack is just the attempt to bypass security. We have millions of them going on right now as we speak, and the good news is that our defenses block the majority of those. If an attack bypasses a layer of security meant to stop it, it's either called an event or an incident. Real simple definition between the two. An event is automatically cured with technology. It could be that solution itself or others in the layer defense that we'll talk about in a minute, or an incident where a person has to get involved to resolve the issue. But in both those cases, the bad actors have not gotten to the data. That's when we use that breach term. And a bad joke that we always say is you don't want to say the term breach unless somebody with a law degree or a badge tells you you have to, but it means they got to the data and they did something like a ransomware attack where they encrypt that information. The other side of this is how bad actors get paid. And there's four common areas. There are a few more, but really we're looking at that ransom, extortion, impersonation, and data sale. Now, ransom is something specific, and a lot of times that ransom and extortion terms will get interchanged or used together. Ransom is just the bad actor holding the access to the information hostage. You have to pay the bad actor to restore access for you. Extortion means you have to pay the bad actor not to release it to a third party or someone else. Impersonation is just where I pretend to be a trusted person inside or outside of your company and get you to do a transaction with me that is false. And last, if a bad actor does obtain your data and they can't encrypt your information or you can recover it quickly, they can sell that on the dark web to another bad actor, and it really has nothing to do with us. But these are the main ways they get their funds. Now, a quick story, being from the MSP world, one time we got called in, and we'll leave the company anonymous and just call it Drummies. And we went and found out that a bad actor had been in their environment. They called because they were missing some funds and they saw some suspicious activity in their email system and accounting system. Well, we went on and found out they had pretty minimal security deployed, no multi-factor authentication, we're sharing passwords, all this stuff that we know nobody does anymore and you're always talked to about not doing. But the bad actor had gotten into their email system and sent the dreaded, our banking information has changed to the company. So they started forwarding payments thinking that they were paying those bills properly. And unfortunately, the company lost $400,000 in deposits. We went in, found the issue, kicked the bad actors out, and then recommended a few things. Just basic policy changes, upgrading some protection on the systems, and then really building a recovery system that would meet their business's demands. Unfortunately, they turned that proposal down. And we're not saying this to shame them. We're just saying this because a lot of times people think these attacks are a one-time event, or they don't think they're really vulnerable because why would bad actors want my information? The $400,000 would tell you what they're trying to achieve there, but it's a real challenge. Unfortunately, we got a call 2 weeks later from the same partner, same client, and they had been fully ransomware again. They didn't change anything in the environment and they were still susceptible. $300,000 to decrypt that environment, and then they finally accepted the $25,000 proposal that would have saved them. So I'm not telling that again to shame them, just giving some awareness that these risks are out there. And if you're attacked once, unfortunately, you are more susceptible for attack in the future. And Rob, I think you have a similar story from your area. Or Scott, maybe you were going to share one.
Sure. Yeah, it was me. Yeah, I mean, we've dealt with this before, and it just basically what my story is more just to kind of go along the lines of not every MSP that you deal with is an expert in cybersecurity. We have a large Fortune 500 that we've been working with for more than 11 years, and about 5 or 6 years ago, their board of directors felt uncomfortable having all their eggs in one basket, so they brought in a second MSP, a much larger MSP, to take over their data center, which was all their financial servers. And we basically transferred everything over to them except for one piece of software that was running on the system that they had paid through the end of that month. We got to the 25th of the month, 10 o'clock at night, a little after 10, they had a ransomware attack that actually occurred. The only piece of software we had running was a EDR software running on the server. It actually caught the ransomware attack. Our SOC, which is our ConnectWise partner, was able to connect into the server, kill the attack, basically inoculate the server. And because of the particular product we were using, we were able to restore the encrypted files within minutes from the time that it happened without even actually going to backups, and then basically notify the client, bring them online. The servers in question were their financial servers for this Fortune 500. So you can imagine if that encryption had been able to run rampant, that it would have basically taken down that entire Fortune 500's financial services for days, if not weeks or months. We went ahead and did our piece. The following morning, they had a second attack after we had inoculated all of the servers in the data center. And we were able to identify the offending machine, which neither our company or the other company they had brought in was managing. And we were able to identify that for the client, give that to them. The other company was running their full cybersecurity stack and everything that they do, and never detected the attack. 6 days later, they still hadn't. And so it just goes to show we only had one product of our normal stack running on that set of servers, and it was able to detect and stop and do this. So it really just goes to the point of vet your MSP and make sure that you're dealing with someone who actually knows what they're doing with respect to this stuff.
Really good point. That's kind of a scary thing because you can launch an MSP, you can not have a lot of cyber knowledge, but you can really be trusted with very important information. So it's good to hear you guys are putting the right tools out there to protect organizations. And thinking about that bad actor that got into that environment where we think breaches start, a lot of us will think, oh, it's somebody in a basement hacking away on a computer, trying to attack Rob specifically or Scott or Jim specifically. Well, what we know is that these are large organizations. So these are businesses, and their sole source of income is that ransomware attack, extortion, data sale, impersonation, those type of activities, typically overseas, but they have HR departments, recruiting firms, and they're very, very good at what they do. And on average, when we think about how an environment is attacked by ransomware, 65% of the time it is from that external environment. But it isn't just external. We can also have challenges that come from within our organization. Our internal employees represent roughly 32% of incidents and breaches. Now, we're probably all jumped to the fact that it could be a malicious user internally doing something to try to damage the company. Luckily, that's a lower percentage. But we do have negligent and complacent users, maybe users that just don't know about the security they should be using, or ones that really don't care. They're just trying to get their work done. And this is where the education and information and monitoring can come in to help protect organizations.
Hey, Jim,
Oh,
just to make a
yeah.
point here too. So, again, kind of back to that compliance issue that I brought up earlier. If you have a cyber policy in place for your company and you're not doing active recurring training of the employees, there's a pretty good likelihood you're not in compliance with your insurance policy. So everything that we do is based around ongoing, consistent training of all the employees. We do that through a combination of active phishing, so that we're trying to bring up their level of education, knowing what to look for so that they can avoid it. And then also brief, but very current topic type little mini movies that will go ahead and show what happened, what could have been done to avoid it, and then give them just a quick 1 or 2 question test at the end to make sure that they absorb the information.
Such an important function and layer of security in there. And that really kind of goes well into this next conversation. When we think about how we find bad emails that come in or attack emails that come in. The spot the fake that we were all trained on for many, many years was very obvious. We would look for the bad email address, the improper grammar, and the bad signatures. And we would identify those really quickly saying, hey, I'm not going to click on this. I know this is a suspect email. In today's world with AI and the ability to write perfect grammar, the ability to weaponize links after delivery or after the fourth click, you can be pretty creative. You can make that email look exactly like it's supposed to. So we have to increase that awareness, Scott, just like you're talking about with the awareness training, to what we need to look for today. Things like urgencies, things like clicks. And we just need to bring awareness and be very skeptical. And it's not just on the business side. A lot of people use their employee or their company email address for personal use. So we have to be prepared for that as well and make sure we're monitoring and protecting against those outside emails that come in. Now, thinking how ransomware works, the interesting part of this is it's about as basic as it gets. We're going to go through how ransomware works in about a minute because it's pretty straightforward. At the end of the day, most of the time, it's either going to be tied to a website or more likely an email. That email will come in with a link. We click that link and it will download the application. This all happens in seconds. It's very, very fast. From there, that application will launch and execute, and its goal is to see how many files it can find. It'll search the local machine, all connected drives, and start to expand from there. When we say connected drives, this is typically things like your server environment, but it can also be locations like your Microsoft 365 or Google connections. But that encryption is not decryptable unless you have a specific key. From there, the user would log in not knowing what happened and click on that file to try to open it like normal and likely get an alert saying, hey, we have encrypted your files. You can pay Bitcoin now to get the key to decrypt those. Lots of challenges come into this type of scenario. And we're going to talk about restoration, how we battle this if it does happen. But what we know for sure, clicking that pay button does not always solve the problem. You could be opening yourself up for legal problems if you pay the wrong bad actors. Lots of times that data isn't 100% recoverable, even with the key. So we always want to do everything we can to not pay the ransom when that comes up. And the way we defend against this is by building holistic protection. And in almost all cases, everybody jumps to that technology side. I'm going to put a solution and I'm going to put a piece of software in to protect an organization. We really want to think about it as people, process, and technology, because we can deploy technology and it may work great today. But over time, it needs to be updated, it needs to be patched, it could change and it could decay if we're not keeping it updated properly. We also need to know how to respond to it if it tells us something's wrong, like Rob was telling us, that alert that came into the Security Operations Center, someone had to respond to that to make sure that it was going to do what it was supposed to do. So we always want to tie all three of these together to make sure we have an optimal system. When we do talk about technology, though, we always want to look at it as layers. And this is oftentimes when we're talking to small businesses, they'll ask, well, why do we need so many solutions? Like, well, each solution has kind of a dedicated task or a dedicated area it's trying to protect. Some oversee multiple areas, but we put that layer together. And Rob, I think you call it an onion, which I really like that analogy. So that if an attack does come in, when we talked about that attack versus event, if it bypasses or gets past a layer of technology meant to stop it, there's another one there to meet it and stop that attack from happening. We can look at this in three different ways. We want to make sure we're protecting from outer threats. We want to make sure we keep data in the organization and usable, so that inner defense. And then we definitely want to make sure we have that ability to recover at all times. By looking at it in three different phases, we can build a holistic defense that really helps an organization.
And Jim, just to point out too, that's so important, the business continuity disaster recovery component of the plan. Anybody that tells you that they can 100% guarantee you that you'll never have a security event happen, that's a lie. There's nobody that can truly protect you 100%. Okay, we can get you about 99.5%, 99.7% of the way there, but there's no such thing as true 100% guarantee. Now, what we can do though is with the proper business continuity and disaster recovery plan, we can 100% guarantee you that in an event happening, we'll actually get you up and running and literally in minutes.
And that's so important. Like you guys were talking about earlier, the 100% guarantee of recovery quickly in the time that business demands is a really important piece, because we see it all the time. I can recover, but it's going to be 2 days. Businesses can't wait 2 days in today's world. They need that fast recovery so they can continue operations. Really good point. We're going to have three more slides here or 3 or 4 more slides that we're going to go through relatively quickly, just to bring some awareness to a few pieces of technology that can help most organizations. First is the endpoint protection. Now, when we're talking about endpoints, we're saying your laptop or your desktop and servers. We used to call this antivirus. That was the original technology, and I'm sure everybody's heard of that. Rob mentioned EDR, endpoint detection and response. That's the current type of software technology that we deploy on a machine to stop both known and unknown threats. But in today's world, like that protection that came in to stop that threat that Rob also talked about, we want to look at that people, process, and technology. And that's where managed detection and response, or MDR, comes in. It defends the endpoint automatically, but it also brings process and people into the solution. So if there is an issue, we have a human responding to that and making sure it's protected properly. We also have email security. With 91% of attacks coming in through email, we want to do everything we can to try to protect it. And with 85% of small businesses using the default layer of protection, meaning Microsoft or Google's basic protection, we have a protection gap we call efficacy gap of about 33%, meaning 1/3 of attacks bypass those specific solutions. So we want to layer in higher quality solutions or more visible solutions that'll stop that additional 33% of attack. Another side of this is just understanding where data lives. And we're going to go through this relatively quickly. We have around 200 zettabytes of data. That was a new term to me a couple months ago. It's a trillion gigabytes. It's a lot of information. About half is on premise and half is in the cloud. We want to make sure we can do a really good job of protecting and restoring that on-premise data, but it gets a little more challenging when we talk about cloud data. So having conversations with your IT provider on who's protecting it and what the restoration times are critical. And last is just talking about what you talked about, Scott, hitting that 3, 2, 1 for backup, making sure we can restore in the time frame they need. 3 copies of your data on 2 different medias, with 1 being offsite. Proper configuration is really important with this, making sure we have immutable storage and solutions that we can 100% guarantee. From there, sorry, I have a barking dog in the background. Hopefully my noise canceling is kicking in. Just a couple of wrap-up items to think about. First, the cost of ransomware is well beyond that fee. When we saw that 5 to 10% of revenue, or that $569,000 charge, that's just a piece of it, roughly 10 to 20%. So we want to make sure, number one, like Scott was saying, we have the right cyber insurance to protect us, but that we also have the right solutions in place so we never have to use it. Protection, is critical to have people, process, and technology. The technology gets all the sizzle, but without that people and process, we can miss a lot of the threats and alerts that come in. And I put this in because of your conversation, Scott and Rob. 100% recoverable. You always want to be in charge of that.
That's
Thanks,
critical
Jim.
to
I
us.
appreciate that. Before we wrap up, everybody, I just want to make sure that you all know that we're a free resource that we're offering here today. We've been talking about ransomware, how fast it happens. Sometimes all it takes is one security gap for an attacker to exploit and wreak havoc in your system with your data. So we're offering a free cybersecurity assessment. It's not an automated scan or some generic checklist. It's a real personalized review from our team of cybersecurity experts. It's totally confidential, and your information is completely private. And a couple of things that you're going to get with it is a live snapshot of your current security posture. It's an objective snapshot of it. Insights into any gaps or risks that ransomware actors could target. It's also going to provide you with clear, actionable recommendations moving forward to help kind of tighten up and close those gaps, as well as kind of a peace of mind and a game plan. That way, either way, you win. So if you're interested, all you have to do is just go ahead and click the link, fill out the form, check the box in the poll that's coming out. We'll follow up with you and make the process really easy for you. I would recommend don't wait to find out if you're secure until after something happens. Let's find out together before ransomware does.
And one other thing that we're throwing in there with that part of that assessment is actually we'll do a dark web scan of your domain to let you guys know if there is anything out there right now for sale on the dark web regarding your company.
Wow, that's impressive. That is such an important thing. I think a lot of people don't think about looking at that information and understanding what's out there already. Our passwords that are already out there for our emails, whether personal or professional. We got to be protected for that. Great job.
I think one thing I'd like to say just real quick is just if we do come in and do that assessment, as an MSP, our goal is to basically make you guys safe and be able to make you guys put your head down on your pillow at night and know that you're protected. So we don't just come in and deal with your IT. We're actually looking at you from a holistic perspective. We want to know start to finish what your requirements are, what your business model is, we want to know about your business, but we want to know about your business because we want to know how you do business, and we want to know what you're required to do for your industry standards and compliance, and we want to make sure that you're in compliance. And that's one of the reasons we take you through the cyber liability assessment with Yukon, is to help you understand what your risks are, identify those through that process, and then put together a customized proposal for you to address those requirements that you have from both the compliance and the cyber insurance perspective. So that's really the main key for this, is we want you to understand what your risk is and how to mitigate that.
Before we finish wrapping up, does anybody have any questions for us? Don't be bashful.
It looks like there's one question in the Q&A. They said, what is your top tip for deterring ransomware for a small business?
I can take that. I mean, the biggest thing that you can do is basically the assessment process. Go through, find out where your risks are, where those gaps are, and then put a layered approach in to actually mitigate it. There's a lot of different things. I mean, we address. I mean, even everything that he went through, that Jim went through in the talk, we do. So, and it really just depends on budget and depends on your ability to allow us to mitigate those factors for you. So we do all kinds of things on the back end, and we do a lot of things on the front end that eliminate that risk. So simple things, make sure that you have an EDR with SOC monitoring, which is an endpoint detection and response. Some sort of privileged access management or zero trust, where you're actually limiting the ability of your own employees being able to launch or do code execution unwittingly. as well as education. Those are three things right off the bat. If we were to take and conquer those, we would eliminate most of your risk. The rest of it is really kind of the layers that we talk about of really minimizing your risk.
Great. Another question submitted here. We have 15 employees. We're a small business. How big of a threat is ransomware since we're so small?
I'll take that.
Yeah, go ahead.
So commonly what we encounter is small business tend to think that bad actors are going after the really big fish because obviously they've just got so much money and so forth, and it just makes more sense to go after them. That's absolutely the opposite of what really is happening in the environment now. They know, the bad actors, that the large companies have in large internal teams of people specifically managing these risks for them. They've got all the most costly software to go ahead and protect them. They've got very in-depth processes to make sure that they're insulated. But small and mid-sized businesses typically don't recognize it as a threat to them, and therefore they're not prepared. And so basically, the term that we use is low-hanging fruit, and that's kind of how the bad actors view small and mid-sized businesses. They're the ones that are really going after first and foremost.
And just a follow up on that, one of the biggest objections we get when we talk to clients and prospects about the solutions is that nobody really cares about our data. Like we're a small company, nobody cares about our data. You're right, they don't. They care about the fact that you care about your data and how important is your data to the functionality of your business. If you were to lose access to your data for a week, what would that be from a loss perspective in revenue and or profit for your business? It'd be catastrophic for most. So the idea is we want to protect your data the same that the major corporations that Scott just talked about do that, but on a small business budget.
And in addition to that, you also want to protect your firm's reputation, because if word gets out to your clients, to your business partners that you had a data breach, now they might not want to continue doing business with you. There might be a case where they want to go ahead and maybe move to one of your competitors or just not be a partner going forward.
I don't know what the statistic is now, but I know a few years ago the statistic was that 94% of small businesses that had a breach were out of business within 6 to 12 months. I think that was in 2018, 2019. I know the statistics have come down a little bit, but that's because people have become more aware and are actually taking steps.
Yeah, it's still well over half, though. That's the scary number. It's still a really large percentage.
Yeah, we just don't want you to play Russian roulette with your business.
Last question here. You mentioned dark web scan. What is that?
Scott, you want to? I can take it. Yeah, basically, there's a whole different internet that we don't know, that the average person doesn't know about, and that's basically when you have companies that get breached or and data taken down. It doesn't necessarily mean your network was breached. It means that some place where you actually did business with or used your email address, or it could be a host of different things, but it could be your business as well being breached. And what happens is that information gets downloaded and then gets pushed out to the dark web for sale. And it's generally done by domain name. So what we do is basically do a scan of that dark web. It's basically we have a series of vendor partners and tools that we use to scan that, and we use your domain name to scan to see if there's anything existing on the dark web for sale, and we can get that information back. One of the services that we do offer for clients is that once we take you on as a client, we do ongoing dark web scanning in real time. So we'll know within minutes if something goes on the dark web about your business. So, but we'll give you that information in that report if you sign up for the cybersecurity assessment.
Great. Looks like that's all the questions. I know there were also some comments earlier asking if this webinar is recorded, and it is. It will be shared on our socials, and you'll also get an email with it as well.
Well, thank you very much for everyone that attended today. If you have any follow-up questions, you can use me as the point of contact, and you can reach me directly at 863-240-0960.
Thanks, everybody. We appreciate your time.
Take care,
Thank
everyone.
you.